Keisha, come. Yes, Betty. I'm delighted to be joined this morning by Cindy Gillespie, our director at DHS, and Deputy Director Keisha Smith, and the Director of Division of Youth Services, Betty Gooman. And we have an important announcement to make, but let me first thank the legislators for being here and supporting our juvenile justice reform efforts. And let me lay a little backdrop for this, that we have, since I've been governor, addressed child welfare reform. It was in crisis mode and we've addressed that, but I always knew that we had to do more in terms of our juvenile justice reform. And even before I was elected 4 years ago, I went down to the Alexander unit because there was some challenges there. I've been to the Dermott unit because we had a report there. And so I've had an interest in this, and I want to thank particularly the Juvenile Justice Reform Board that I've worked with, spoken with, but it's comprised of legislators, but the Administrative Office of the Courts have been a critical partner in the development of proposals and reform ideas to better handle our juveniles that are brought into state custody. And so today I want to announce a series of measures that we're going to implement that's going to strengthen our juvenile justice system, that's going to accomplish significant reform, and the objective is to reduce those that are housed in secure facilities and to do more that it provides community-based treatment for our juveniles. This is an outcome and a direction that we want to be able to go. And so in order to be able to accomplish this, we're going to do a couple things. First of all, I'll be asking the General Assembly to pass legislation that will make the validated risk assessment, that is a tool that's utilized by many of our juvenile judges, but to make that mandatory, to make sure that across the board in our state we're having a uniform tool to assess the risk of juveniles, to make sure they get the right level of assistance and help, treatment, and to evaluate their risk. That's a very important tool that the Administrative Office of the Courts have sought, and we will be able to hopefully pass that in the General Assembly. Secondly, I'm announcing today that we will be closing over the next few months 2 facilities. One is the Dermott Juvenile Treatment Center, and the other is that we'll be merging the Colt and Harrisburg into one facility at Harrisburg. So we have 7 secure facilities that we house juveniles. We are closing 2 of those. And over time, through the savings of the closing of those facilities, we will be able to invest more in community-based treatment, which is a critical part of this. But in addition to closing those facilities, which puts us in a position to put out for bid to the private sector a very clear direction that we want to go in our juvenile justice treatment facilities, the opportunity for the private sector to bid on their engagement in managing these facilities, which we expect that to be accomplished by next year. But in the meantime, we're going to be implementing these reform efforts to get ready for that transfer to a private sector provider. Some of the initial steps in the phase 1 of what we're accomplishing is revamping the assessment process so that youth get into treatment more quickly, moving to treatment plans that are developed by a treatment team and individualized for the youth, engaging family members and aftercare providers that will ensure the youth's successful return. It's focused on the youth, regularly reviewing the treatment progress so that they're not simply kept there for a longer period of time than necessary, but whenever they get to the point they can be released back in the community, that is accomplished more quickly. And so that review will be done on at least 3-month intervals. We'll be providing progress reports of treatment to the treatment team stakeholders, increasing the use of group homes, as I mentioned, closing the 23-bed Dermott Juvenile Treatment Center. We will be replacing the IT system at DYS to a system known as Right Track. We'll be revamping the oversight and monitoring programs to increase system integrity. And a very important part of this is that is the funding of community-based treatment for our juveniles. Part of that is the continuing of the $2 million innovation grants that were put into the budget 2 years ago. We want to be able to continue those grants in the current budget. And secondly, we'll be adding a $750,000 in funding that will start in July for more community-based treatment, as well as $200,000 to accelerate field assessments and their use to make sure the juveniles get the treatment that they need and are placed in the right facility and get the right treatment plan that is necessary. And so these are important steps to reform our juvenile justice system. It'll be a partnership with the Administrative Office of the Courts, a partnership with our legislature as they consider this legislation, and then, of course, the leadership at DYS to implement these reform measures is critical so that we do the right thing for our young people and those that are in need, but also have a chance to get back on the right track in life. And that's what we're trying to accomplish with this effort. It's a great responsibility for the state, and we want to do it in the right way. And with that, I wanted to invite Keisa Smith, our Deputy Director, to make additional comments and to explain this further.
Thank you. Thank you. First off, we definitely want to thank Governor Hutchinson for his commitment to the juveniles in our system. As he referenced, on Governor Hutchinson's very first day, he visited our Alexander facility and stated his commitment to moving the juvenile justice system forward. And so we are very excited to see this day coming. There are many stakeholders in the room. I definitely want to thank the judiciary, our providers, everyone who has walked in this process with us. Many of you all have sat around the table for years and talked about the changes that needed to be made. And so we are very excited to be here today to be able to say that we are starting that pathway forward. I want to emphasize the fact that this is phase one of this process, that there will be many more changes to come down the line, but we are starting with some significant changes. The governor did a great job in going over all of the things that we're planning on doing. I wanted to focus on the fact that we are really looking at taking a deep dive into the treatment of our youth. When our juveniles come into a secured setting, what we want to make sure is that we are properly assessing them, determining what their needs are, and making sure that we have a treatment plan that will address what their concerns are and move them through the system so that they move through the system appropriately and that they come out better, and that they go back to the community and enhance the community. That is the goal of our facilities, and that is the goal that we are seeking to achieve. So we will be majorly focused on ensuring that the children get that treatment, that we are consistently reviewing that treatment, and that we are making sure that they are progressing, and that if they are not progressing, that we are wrapping the tools around them that they need to ensure that they continue to progress. As the governor stated, we are equally committed to making sure that if a child does not need to be in a secured setting, that they are not there, that they are in a non-secured setting, or that they are in the community with community-based services wrapped around them to keep them close to their family, keep them close to those individuals that are committed to their success and ensuring that they progress along. So as you all have fact sheets, I won't belabor all of the changes that we are going through, but we will definitely take all the questions pertaining to that, but we are excited about the fact that we are making these changes to ensure that the youth of Arkansas have a better tomorrow. So with that, I will
just suggest you mention the infrastructure investments.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Cindy. She reminded me that not on top of all of the changes that we are making, many of you all know that there have been concerns noted in the media by our legislative representatives about our current facilities. And so we are making an investment on top of all of the other changes that we are making an investment in the infrastructures that we currently have. One of the things that happens when we are closing two of our facilities is that we are going to be able to divert some funding to ensure that we enhance the facilities that currently exist. We've had major concerns noted around the locking system at the Alexander facility. That is a fix that will be coming in the upcoming months. We will also be investing in the infrastructure of all of our existing facilities. That includes sewer improvements, HVAC improvements, minor things all the way down to painting and lawn repair, but things that are critical for the kids that are in the facility to ensure that they are not hampered by small things like things not functioning and things not working as they continue on their treatment process. And with that said.
Good. Very well. Are there any questions? No, I'm going to, Cindy, why don't you address that? Or?
Sure. Happy to. No, they're not out of a job, all right? We are looking at a transformation over the next 7 months until the new contracts go into place on July 1. That is when all the workers at the facilities right now are temporary employees. They're hired as extra help. And have been working in those roles since DYS took over the facilities back 1.5 years ago. And what we want to do is ensure that when the new vendor comes in July, he has the opportunity to hire everyone who is working. So as we go through the next several months and we work through a methodical process to be able to close those two facilities, the employees that work there will be, that are employees of course in good standing, will be allowed the opportunity to transition to another job so that they can stay aboard until the new contractor comes aboard in July.
You're talking about, the government this includes private sector.
Correct.
We're expecting some private company to take over operations of Dermont and
Operations of the 5 remaining facilities. So we will be posting a draft RFP within the next few days, and that draft RFP, we put it out as draft so that we can get input from potential vendors before we go with a final draft. And then a final RFP. And then we will go through a procurement process that will end with the new vendor starting July 1 of 2019, and that will privatize all of the DYS residential facilities, those 5 facilities. By that point, we will have closed Colt and Dermont, the Dermont Treatment Center.
so juvenile detention centers, in essence, will be run by,
No. Do you want to explain juvenile detention centers? Sure.
I just want to make sure that we're using the right terminology, because right now there are juvenile detention centers and they exist independent of state government. They are county-run facilities. And so our facilities, we refer to them as juvenile treatment centers. And for many years, they were all privatized to begin with. Back in December 2016, we put forward a contract, and it did not go through. And that's when the state took over the operations of the facilities that we currently run. And so we are putting them back out for a private contractor.
So the answer is yes.
Yes.
That they will, after we go through the bidding process, operate the remaining 5 juvenile treatment centers.
Yes, sir.
and that's what is important here. We don't want to put out for bid that they operate 7 when we're closing 2. So we had to make the decisions early and to set these reform efforts in place so that we can accomplish the reform and put it in motion as we also go into the private sector bidding on this process. Yes, ma'am.
This new RFP, is the goal to have a single provider to maintain all 5 GTCs? And also, will the RFP include special language to really ensure oversight? Because now it's private control of the treatment of kids.
Well, let me emphasize that the responsibility is through DYS, it's through the state, and so it's a critical part of it to exercise oversight, to have the right auditing of the private sectors, because it is ultimately our responsibility. But we believe that we can, there's some excellent private sector providers that are out there that can accomplish this in an effective way for our juveniles, provide the service, but also do it efficiently. And we expect them to take many of those that are working right now and build them into their operations. But you might want to address whether you're going to have one contractor or multiple.
Our current intent is to have one provider. So when we put out the draft RFP, it will be for all of the treatment centers. And excuse me. So it will be for all of the residential, the residential treatment centers, excluding the Alexander facility, because it is currently under contract with rights of passage. So.
I might have missed this, but why are you going back to private as opposed to DYS one?
So we fully believe, one, that at this present time, our providers have shown themselves to have the expertise needed to properly run the facilities. DYS has done an amazing job, but we do believe that if the state continues to run it, there is going to be increased costs that will need to be placed into DYS, including expansion of state employees and expansion of the staffing at DYS in order to properly accommodate all of the needs, and our providers have been able to do that, not to mention the fact that, again, many of the vendors that are bidding on, or that will bid, are entities that have operated facilities and have this expertise, and we also have the opportunity to vet them and look at their past history and ensure that they have a history of treating youth in the manner that they need to and properly, and we will operate the oversight as opposed to trying to operate them ourselves.
But it will also be more cost efficient.
Oh, no, sorry. I was going to go back on the other question, but
Let's go
Okay.
to the next question.
okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I was just going to say, the kids that are already in residential, there's a lot of talk in phase one about kind of coming up with better treatment plans, better discharge processes. What are you going to do with the kids? Are you going to look at them all from scratch to redesign their treatment plans based on what you're going to be doing in the future?
Betty.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, Betty.
Some of these changes we are phasing in even as we speak. We are reworking our entire case management system, from intake, assessment, treatment plans, length of stay, what kind of services we give. So we're always in a process of making adjustments, but there are some things that we are working on now that will take effect in the late spring or certainly by July. So it won't be all at once. We are continuing to work on that, and we have some help from some national consultants, so we make sure that our treatment system is based on best practices and what other states are doing.
We'll be available for additional questions afterwards if there's follow-up, and I appreciate Director Gillespie and her leadership on this, and Kisa and Ms. Gooman. Thank you for making sure that we can accomplish this important juvenile justice reform. So with that, thank you.
Sorry about that flub. Look, we promised you back when we came to visit Mansfield. Right. But